It's 3 a.m. The screen of your phone is burning your eyes. You're staring at your banking app, refreshing the page over and over again. You are lying in the dark, crunching numbers that just don't add up. But here is the one thing you don't know. The guy in the apartment next door is doing the exact same thing. By morning, the illusion returns. Your neighbor is warming up a brand new car. A colleague is bragging about a vacation to the islands. Your social media feed is screaming about success. And you ask yourself the same question. Why does everyone around me have money while I'm just trying to survive? Let me save you years of self-doubt. It's all a lie. I've spent half my life in investment banks. I've seen the underbelly of this system. That neighbor with the car, the bank likely owns it. That perfect vacation, it was paid for with a credit card that they'll be paying off for the next 3 years. Today, we are going to turn off the noise. We're going to remove the filters and look at the naked, brutal facts. Where does the average person actually stand? How deep is the debt pit? And why, despite working 24/7, do the majority never get any richer? The numbers I'm about to show you might scare you, but they might also set you free. Are you ready to find out your real place in the food chain? Then, let's start with the foundation. Let's talk about how much people actually earn. Let's deal with one myth right away. When you hear on the news that the average salary is growing, turn off the TV. They are trying to trick you. There's an old joke in statistics. If Jeff Bezos walks into a cheap dive bar where 10 unemployed guys are drinking, then, on average, everyone in that bar instantly becomes a billionaire. Did they get richer? No, they still can't afford a second drink, but the statistics say everything is great. This is exactly how governments sell us the idea of economic stability. That is why, as a banker, I never look at the average, I look at the median. That is the point where exactly half the people earn less and half earn more. And this is where the real horror story begins. In most developed countries, if you subtract taxes and inflation, the real purchasing power of the median worker hasn't changed in decades. You are working harder than your parents. You are more educated than your parents. But at the end of the month, you have less money left over than they did. We have created a new class of people. Sociologists call them the working poor. You wake up to an alarm. You spend hours in traffic. You sit in meetings. You do everything right. But the math of your life doesn't add up. And here is a statistic that will blow your mind. According to the latest global research, more than 60% of the population lives paycheck to paycheck. You think this only applies to low-wage workers? Think again. 1/3 of people earning over $100,000 a year also live from check to check. Think about that. People in the top income bracket are just one missed paycheck away from financial catastrophe. How is that possible? How can you earn a pile of money and remain poor? This is the phenomenon of golden handcuffs. We are used to thinking that poverty is a lack of income, but in the modern world, poverty is a lack of management. Imagine your bank account is a bucket. You can pour water in there from a fire hose, get a raise, take a side hustle, start a business. But if the bucket has holes the size of a fist, the water level will never rise. You get the notification that your salary has landed. A pleasant sound, right? But 48 hours later, nothing remains of that sum but dust. The money vanishes as if it never existed. Where does it go? Why is it that the more we earn, the less we keep? To understand this, we need to look into the black hole of your expenses. Financial gurus on the internet love one piece of advice. Stop buying coffee every morning, give up the avocado toast, and you'll become a millionaire. I'll tell you as a banker, that is total nonsense. It is a mathematical lie designed to distract you from the real problem. You aren't poor because you drink a $5 latte. You are poor because you live in a mathematical trap that you built yourself. Let's look at the big three. The three whales that devour 70% of the average person's income: housing, transport, and food. The moment you get a promotion, something strange happens. Your brain doesn't say, "Great, now I can save more." It says, "Great, now I can afford a better car." This is called lifestyle inflation. Or, as we say on Wall Street, Parkinson's law. Expenses always rise to meet income. Remember your first job. You earned pennies, ate instant noodles, and somehow survived. Now you earn 3 times as much. But you likely have the same amount of money, 0. Why? Because the Toyota turned into a Mercedes, the rented room turned into a mortgage, the home-cooked dinner turned into delivery. You are running on a treadmill. You're speeding up, you're sweating, your heart is pounding. But the scenery around you isn't changing. You stay in the exact same spot. The system loves people like this. You are the perfect cog. Because when you raise your standard of living, you lose the right to quit. You can no longer say no to your boss. You need that salary to service this lifestyle. You buy things you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't even like. It's an old quote, but it has never been more relevant than right now. Look around your apartment. How many things are just lying there? Clothes with tags on them, gadgets used once. This is a graveyard of your money. Each of these items cost you hours of your life. You traded your time for a piece of plastic that is now just gathering dust. But the scariest part happens when Parkinson's law malfunctions. When your desires start growing faster than your salary, when there is no money left in the wallet, but you still want the new phone. In that moment, a portal to hell opens up. We stop spending our money and start spending money from our future. Has it ever occurred to you how strangely we treat debt? If you ask a friend for $1,000, you feel awkward. You feel obligated. But when the bank gives you a credit limit of $10,000, you feel rich. You feel powerful. This is the greatest marketing trick in the history of mankind. Bankers repackaged slavery and sold it to us as freedom. A credit card is not a financial tool. It is a time machine. Only it works in one direction. It takes hours of your life from the future and burns them in the present. You see a new TV. You don't have the money for it, but you have the plastic, the click of the terminal, the pleasant beep. The item is yours. You get a dopamine hit right now. And the pain of parting with the money is delayed until later. Banks know how your brain works better than you do. They know that a human being is incapable of realistically assessing the concept of interest. Here is the brutal math. If you make a purchase of $2,000 on a card with a standard rate and only pay the minimum payment, do you know how long it will take to pay it off? Not a year, not 2, but more than 10 years. And in the end, you will pay triple the price for that TV. But here is what nobody realized. The moment you tap that card on the terminal, the deal looks very different than you think. You believe you bought an item. In reality, the bank bought you. From that second, you stop working for your family, for your dreams, or for your vacation. The first hours of your workday now belong to the bank. You get up in the morning, go to the office, and work just to pay the interest on last year's dinner. Debt is a collar. At first, it is light, almost unnoticeable. Interest-free periods, cashback, rewards points. This is all lubricant to make the collar slip on easier. But as soon as the trap snaps shut, the lubricant disappears. Only the pressure remains. Statistics show that the average person spends about 10–15% of their net income just servicing consumer debt. Not paying off the debt itself, but just keeping it from growing. It is running in place with weights on your legs. You live in a house owned by the bank. You drive a car owned by the bank. And you pay with a salary that is already spoken for months in advance. But do you know what the scariest thing about this scheme is? It only works as long as everything is going perfectly. As long as you are healthy, as long as you have a job, as long as the sun is shining. But life is not a straight line. Sometimes a storm hits, and when you have that collar around your neck, any stumble can be fatal. Imagine a sound, a dull metallic clunk from under the hood of your car in the middle of the highway, or the vibration of the phone in your pocket. You pick up, and the doctor's voice says, "We need to discuss your test results." In that moment, time stops. The first thought racing through your head isn't fear for your health or your transport. The first thought that hits you like a shock is, how much is this going to cost? Welcome to the statistic that gives any economist goosebumps. Almost half of the adult population in developed countries cannot cover an unexpected expense of $1,000. They simply do not have that money. Think about it. People walk around with the latest iPhones in their pockets. They drink expensive coffee. They wear branded sneakers. On the outside, they look like the middle class, but inside, their financial system is hollow. It's called financial anorexia. You look healthy, but your wallet has no fat reserves. If you lost your job tomorrow, how many days could you survive without borrowing money or selling things? A week? A month? For most people, the answer is less than 30 days. We live on a razor's edge. We have built a life that requires perfect conditions. The sun must shine. The paycheck must arrive on time. Health must not fail. But life is chaos. And when chaos knocks on the door, 50% of people have no shield to protect themselves. What happens when there is no safety net? You fall. And you don't just fall to the ground. You fall into an even deeper debt pit. You take payday loans, you borrow from relatives, you sell things for pennies. One small problem triggers a chain reaction that destroys a life in a couple of months. You are walking a tightrope over a canyon. You smile, you wave to the audience on Instagram, but you forgot one detail. There is no net beneath you. One wrong step, one gust of wind, and the show is over. And if it is so hard for us to simply save $1,000 for a rainy day, what about the biggest dream of all? The very one sold to us since childhood as the symbol of success and stability. What about owning your own home? Remember the stories from your parents or grandparents. The story is always the same. Your grandfather worked at the factory, grandmother stayed home with the kids, and by the time they were 30, they bought this house. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? For our generation, it sounds like science fiction. Let's look at a graph that explains all your failures with real estate. Imagine two lines. One is the cost of housing, the second is the average salary. Since the 1970s, they walked side by side holding hands. But at some point, the real estate line rocketed into the stratosphere, while the salary line was left crawling on the ground. The gap between these lines is the stolen future of an entire generation. Today, in major metropolises of the world, from London to Toronto, from New York to Sydney, the math is broken. To buy an average house, you need to save 100% of your salary for 10 to 15 years. No eating, no drinking, no paying taxes, just saving. So they sell us a solution, the mortgage. The word mortgage is derived from Old French, meaning death pledge. And that is not a metaphor. It is a literal description of the deal. When you sign those papers, you feel pride. I'm a homeowner, you tell your friends. But let's be honest, you are not an owner. You are just a tenant with very strict terms, where the landlord is the bank. And this landlord forces you to do repairs at your own expense. Calculate the real cost. If you take a 30-year mortgage at current rates, you aren't buying one house. You are buying one house for yourself and two more houses for the bank in the form of interest. You voluntarily sign up for servitude lasting half a lifetime, 30 years. You can't quit. You can't take risks. You are chained to this chunk of concrete and brick. But here is what no one says out loud. In the modern economy, renting can be freedom, and ownership can be a prison. We hold on to the idea of our own corner like a life raft. But this raft is made of lead. Millions of people waste their prime years fighting for square footage. They give up travel, education, and living in the here and now for the sake of a concrete box in the future. And while we are busy with this struggle, while we look down trying not to trip over the next payment, we don't notice the clouds gathering on the horizon. Because time is ticking. And sooner or later, the day will come when you can no longer work. What then? Close your eyes for a second. What do you see when I say the word retirement? White sand, a cottage by the sea, grandkids playing on the lawn while you drink tea on the porch? Now open your eyes. That picture was sold to you in a brochure 40 years ago. For most people watching this video, that picture is as real as a unicorn. Look closer the next time you go to the supermarket. Look at the cashier, or the taxi driver who drove you yesterday. Have you noticed how many of them have gray hair and tired eyes? People whose hands tremble when they hand you your change? It's not boredom that forces them to work at 70. It is fear. The concept of retirement is a historical anomaly. It has existed for only a couple of generations. Our grandfathers invented a system. The young pay for the old. It worked when families had 5 kids and people lived to 70. But today, the math of that deal has collapsed. We stopped having children and started living to 90. This is the cruel irony of progress. Medicine gave us an extra 20 years of life, but the economy didn't give us the money to pay for those years. Pension funds around the world are bursting at the seams. It is a giant Ponzi scheme that has simply run out of new participants. And here are the numbers that will keep you up at night. To maintain your current standard of living in retirement, you need to save a sum equal to 25 times your annual expenses. If you spend $40,000 a year, you need $1 million. Look into your savings. Is there $1 million there? For 90% of people, the answer is no. It's not even close. Most people approach retirement age with a sum that will last for a couple of years of modest living. And then the free fall begins. You worked all your life, you paid taxes, you followed the rules, and at the end of the road, you are not met with a golden autumn, but with the necessity of standing behind a counter because your pension isn't enough to pay for heating and medicine. Your body will beg for rest, your joints will ache, but the electric bill knows no pity. It will arrive every month, regardless of your blood pressure or arthritis. We are moving toward a world where the word retirement will vanish from the dictionary. There will only be work and inability to work. This sounds like a sentence, like inevitability. But while you and I are drowning in these problems, counting pennies at the register, there's a group of people for whom these rules are not written. They live in a parallel universe. While inflation eats your savings, their debt makes them richer. How is this possible? We live on the same planet, but in 2 different economic universes. You, your friends, and 99% of the population live in one. The people who write the rules live in the other. And the difference between these worlds isn't how many zeros are in the bank account. The difference is mechanics. Remember I talked about debt, about how it destroys your life? Well, the rich love debt. They love it more than their own children, but they use it differently. When you take out a loan, you buy a liability, a car, a phone, a vacation, things that lose value and suck money out of your pocket. This is bad debt. When a wealthy person takes out a loan, they buy an asset, an apartment complex, a warehouse, a business. This asset pays for itself. The tenants pay off the rich guy's mortgage, and he gets the profit and the tax breaks. This is the main secret they keep from you. You use debt to look rich. They use debt to get rich. You trade your time for money to give it to the bank. They take the bank's money to free up their time. This is exactly why the gap between us is growing at cosmic speed. Recall any crisis, the pandemic, the market crash, a recession. What does the average person do? They panic. They sell assets at the bottom. They lose their jobs. They shrink in fear. And what happens in the private clubs? They pop the champagne. Because for the 1%, an economic collapse is not a catastrophe. It is a fire sale. It is a season of massive discounts. While you are fighting for survival, they are buying up businesses and real estate for pennies on the dollar. Wealth doesn't disappear during a crisis. It just changes hands. It flows from those who panic to those who are prepared. It is a cruel game. It is a zero-sum game. For someone to win big, someone has to lose. The system is tuned to pump money from the bottom up. Inflation eats your savings, but it inflates the value of their assets. Prices rise. You get poorer, they get richer. Rates fall. Your savings are devalued, and it becomes cheaper for them to take loans to buy up the world. You are running down an escalator. They are standing in an elevator going up to the penthouse. And the most insulting part isn't that they are smarter or harder working than you. No, I've met complete idiots with multi-million-dollar fortunes. The only difference is that they know the rules of the game, and you don't. You were given a baseball bat and sent out onto a hockey rink. You're trying, you're sweating, but you can't win because you are playing a different game. And here arises a question that should make you angry. Why? Why did no one explain these rules to you in school? Why did you spend 10 years studying cloud types and the structure of an amoeba, but not a single hour studying how money works? Do you think this is an accident? Or is it part of the plan? Let's be honest, the education system isn't broken. It works perfectly. It just wasn't created to make you rich. It was created in the industrial era. The clients, the owners of factories and plants, didn't need investors or free thinkers. They needed workers, people who could sit still for 8 hours, follow instructions, and not ask too many questions. They needed people smart enough to operate the machines, but not smart enough to realize how they were being exploited. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. It is an economic necessity. Imagine for a second that tomorrow, every person in the country woke up with a full understanding of how money works. What would happen? People would stop taking loans for weddings and vacations. They would stop buying new cars from dealerships. They would stop playing the lottery. They would start saving 20% of their income and investing in index funds. Do you know what would happen to the economy? It would collapse in a week. The banking sector would fold. The auto industry would go bankrupt. Retail chains would close. GDP would fly off a cliff. Our modern economy is built on consumption. It is vitally necessary for it that you remain financially illiterate. It needs you to spend everything you earn and then a little bit more on top. Your financial ignorance is the fuel for the engine of the global economy. Every time you pay 20% APR on a credit card, you are paying an illiteracy tax. Every time money sits under a mattress being eaten by inflation, you are paying a fine for ignorance. This is an invisible tax. It's not on your receipts. But it takes more money from the average person than the government takes through income tax. Millions of dollars flow from the pockets of those who don't understand how money works into the pockets of those who do. It sounds cruel. And it really is. You were thrown into the ocean without swimming lessons. And now, as you are drowning, they are trying to sell you water instead of a life jacket. But here is the good news. For the first time in human history, the monopoly on knowledge has been shattered. Before, to learn these secrets, you had to be born into the right family or work in a closed office on Wall Street. Today, all the information is available. It is in your pocket, on the screen of the very smartphone you are probably still paying off. The wall has fallen. There are no more secrets. There is only laziness and fear. You can be angry at the system. You can blame politicians, bankers, teachers. That is fair, but it is useless. Anger will not fill your bank account. The only way to win a game where the cards are marked is to stop being the perfect victim. Stop being average. We have reached the finale. You have 2 paths. You can close this video, go back to Instagram, and continue pretending that everything is normal. Or you can take the first step out of the matrix. There is a way out. It isn't simple, it isn't fast, and it certainly isn't for everyone. But it is real. No one is coming to save you. This is the most important thought you must take away from this video. The government will not solve your problems. Your boss won't double your salary just because. The bank won't forgive your debts. The cavalry isn't coming. You are the general of your own army and you are surrounded. But now you have an advantage. You see the battlefield. You know where the traps are set. To stop being average, you will have to do things that seem insane to the average person. When everyone buys new cars on credit, you will drive an old, reliable one until you can afford to buy a new one with cash. When friends invite you to an expensive bar every Friday, you will sometimes say no. When everyone chases likes, you will chase assets. It will be a lonely path. People will look at you sideways. They will call you cheap or weird. But remember, to be normal in our time means to be in debt and depressed. You do not want to be normal. Here is your battle plan. It is primitive as a hammer, but it works. First, radical honesty. Tonight, open all your accounts. Write down every penny of debt. Look this monster in the eyes. Fear disappears when clarity appears. Second, stop the bleeding. Cut up the credit cards if you don't know how to use them. Stop buying liabilities. If an item doesn't bring in money and isn't vitally necessary, you don't buy it. Period. Third, start paying yourself. Not the bank, not the clothing retailer, not the restaurant. Yourself. Set up an automatic transfer of a part of your salary to an investment account on payday. Let it be $10. Let it be $50. The main thing is the habit. The statistics we analyze today are a sentence for the majority. But you are no longer the majority. You are informed, you are armed, and now it is your move.